You're listening to Cards to the Moon, a podcast about trading cards from both a collector and investor perspective. We hope you'll stick around for the ride as we take a deep dive into the state of the hobby, share some hot takes, hopefully some useful advice, and fun stories along the way. Hey guys, welcome back to Cards to the Moon. This is episode 132, and it is a Friday episode. My name is Clark from 5Card Guys on Instagram and 5cardguys.com. With me as always is Hyung of Integrity Sports Cards and John, who is Trade You at Recess. You can also find this podcast on Instagram as well at Cards to the Moon, and that's all one word. All right, off the top today, there was an announcement made today by eBay that it will now be extending its authenticity guarantee service for trading cards here in Canada, where we are from. Yeah. So for our American friends, they already know what this is about. But for anyone who's hearing this for the first time, the authenticity guarantee program by eBay, in Canada specifically, it will involve any single ungraded trading cards worth more than $250 that is sold. And the next step is that it's shipped to an authenticator. And for Canadians, the seller ships it directly to Certified Collectibles Group for a, quote, comprehensive multi-point physical inspection, end quote. Then if it passes authentication, the card is sent via expedited shipping to the buyer. All right, so a couple of differences from how they do it in the US right now is I believe the authenticity guarantee also applies to graded cards.
Right.
There, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and the authenticator in the US is PSA, not CCG, right? Or
CSG.
Right? Yeah, CCG, yeah. So your initial thoughts about eBay rolling this program out in Canada, and just your thoughts also on the authenticity guarantee program by eBay in general, now that it's been going on for a while in the States in particular. Because if you guys remember when we first talked about it, there were some packaging concerns and also complaints on how this delays the shipping process.
Right.
What do you guys think?
Quick question. So if you're a Canadian seller and you sell to a Canadian buyer, do you ship it to the US and then it ships back into Canada?
I don't think so.
Or is it like a authenticator in Canada?
Yeah, I think that's how I read it.
Like a local authenticator, and then yeah.
Okay. So the authenticator in Canada, I believe, would be Certified Collectibles Group.
So I was the one that kind of dogged it because, the first couple, it was kind of a mess the way things are shipping out. But I've used eBay a few times since, and I gotta say it's not a bad process. I don't know if it's the most efficient, to be honest, but like shipping wise, there was never any issues for me in terms of time wise. And I could see now from a seller's perspective, honestly, I sold some cards, over the past couple of weeks, and I was thinking that actually I was like, you know what? Did I just bypass kind of like the authenticator process because I'm selling from, I guess, Canada into the US. So I never had to send them to what's called? I send them directly to the U.S. buyer, so we didn't have that authentication process, right? So yeah, it was for me. It's I think as a seller, I think it provides a lot of makes it more at ease, I guess. Because now you don't have to deal with like returns. That if you send a proper card out to eBay, they authenticate that everything is good, and to me that's key, is not having buyers try to return anything when there's no reason to. Everything was fine, right? So I like it in the sense I was the early not a fan of it because I thought the process was just one step longer, but they've been able to provide great service within it. I actually reuse the packaging that I get for eBay to ship out my cards. Right. So it works out because it doubles as packaging. I think it's a lot of extra money that eBay is spending on the packaging, to be honest, because that's some like I'm pretty sure those eBay blue, protectors, aren't cheap, right? So
Right.
yeah, overall, I'm happy. I'm happy that it's coming to Canada. It helps the process, I think, for both buyers and sellers. So yeah, I'm all for it now.
Okay. Interesting.
Interesting.
John?
When you guys when you send it out to the authenticator, does it stay in the hands of eBay until the card is sold, or until you've removed the listing?
No, after
do
it
you guys know how that
sells,
works?
you just ship it out to the authenticator, and then
Yeah.
they just
Oh.
it literally goes to them. They authenticate it, and they ship it out to the end consumer.
I see.
Right.
But then your listing will say eBay authenticated.
Guaranteed. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. But this is prior to you shipping it out to them.
Yeah. If you list it for a certain price, like
Yeah.
the over the $200 threshold,
Yeah.
it's automatically enrolled in the authenticity guarantee program. You don't have a choice.
I see. And then once you send it out and they deem that it's not authentic, and then some kind of issue or refund starts
They
happening
send it
from
back
there.
to you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think ever since it first came out and there were some, so-called shipping issues, I haven't heard of any complaints since. I don't know about you guys, but not one mention on social media. So it seemed like it was going well. Our buddy Andrew did get a card that I saw was through the eBay, and the packaging looked pretty slick. It was well packaged. It looked really like premium. So I had nothing bad to say. And to be honest, when you're looking at especially raw cards, and you're scrolling through eBay, now I look for that. Like if it's doesn't say authenticity guaranteed,
Right.
I'm like, I don't even want to bother looking at this one, right? So I think it's a great thing. It's great news for us in Canada that can trade and deal. This is perfect. So yeah, I like it.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's what eBay was banking on, right? That people would feel more secure with that authenticity guarantee blue check mark. And I think that's how they're trying to get more of the market share. So I'm with you guys. I think it's a great idea. I also sold my Luka Doncic silver, took a big loss on it, but
You sold it. Okay,
but that was obviously has to go through the authenticity guarantee program. And right before the recording of the program, I saw that it got shipped to the authenticator in California, and they'll inspect it now, and then it should just ship right to the buyer. And I've done it a few times now, and zero problems for me as well.
Nice.
And I've been on the receiving end. That Mike Trout Bowman Chrome card that I got, that went through the authenticity program, and I received it fine. So personal experience, no problems at all. I've only heard one incident where it was a kind of a nightmarish scenario where the buyer didn't receive it, and eBay allegedly won't do anything about it. FedEx apparently lost it.
Right.
And, they're just pointing fingers at that point. Like FedEx is pointing at eBay, eBay is pointing at FedEx, and the person that sold the card is kind of SOL, right? So that's the only time I've heard of an incident.
So you're really relying on eBay to pull through for your shipping, because then you're telling me the seller gets the hit on that one?
With this one incident, it seemed that was the case.
Oh, that's on eBay. eBay needs to pay for that one, I think.
So yeah, and you know what? This is all from the Twitter feed, so I don't know
Right.
exactly the details.
I personally would be upset if I shipped out a card to eBay, it got there, they authenticated it, and then eBay sent it out to the customer, and then they screwed up, or maybe FedEx screwed up, whoever. But hey, This is part of the process. This is what I say. It's like, why put a process in the middle and you got to take responsibility, right? That's one extra step that you could have
100%.
avoided, but I like it. Just take responsibility on that
Yes.
side. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Hopefully the issue got resolved, but yeah, I agree with you 100%. The other thing, before we move on to our discussion for today's Friday episode, apparently, and I don't know if this is just for the US, but you can bypass the authenticity guarantee if you set your receiving mailing address to a PO box, because FedEx doesn't send to a PO box.
Right. Oh, I see. Is that
So So that's why I heard. I can't remember where I saw it. I think it was on Instagram.
But we send our stuff to a PO box.
So like the one that we send it to is not technically considered a PO box.
Oh, like a
It's
PO box address, like a PO box 106 in
right.
New Mexico or whatever, right?
Exactly. And the ones where the websites, they say essentially it's your own address. It's not an actual technically a PO box. So that's not impacted. But if you had an actual PO box, and some people do this on purpose, like they just kind of don't want to take that extra step. They're okay with taking the risk. So they set their mailing address to a PO box, and then it just bypasses the whole authenticity guarantee. That's what I heard. I just want to kind of put it out there, but
interesting.
Anyway, it is interesting. Okay, let's just go on to our discussion today. We haven't had a chance to talk about this yet on the pod, but I thought we could discuss Ken Goldin's Netflix series on this Friday show. It's called The King of Collectibles, The Goldin Touch, and it's a 6-part series that features a kind of behind-the-scenes look at the Goldin auction house located in New Jersey. And each episode showcases a variety of big-ticket memorabilia items, including some big-time sports cards like the LeBron Triple Logo Man and Steph Curry Topps Chrome Gold Refractor. But yeah, anyway, did you guys get to see it? And if you did, what you think of it? And if you didn't catch all the episodes yet, I'm wondering what kind of impact do you think a Netflix series like this will have for the hobby, if any?
I didn't watch all the episodes, but I kind of skimmed through because I'm just short on time. But I will say, one, I will say it's a genius marketing ploy for Goldin, first and foremost. They totally basically solidified them as the expertise. And if you think about it, I know they're going to catch a lot of slack. So let's put out all the typical responses. Oh, this was during the hobby hype. The appraisals are off.
Right.
Fair enough. It was recorded before. Good observation. But for me, the way Ken basically went about this, I think it brings enormous value to Goldin auctions, first and foremost, but it also brings a lot of value to the hobby, because at the end of the day, whether it's a marketing ploy for Goldin, it's a marketing ploy for the industry in general. And I think it's clear when you said it wasn't necessarily advertising the sports card industry. It was more memorabilia and collectibles, right? So who else is going to do something like that? Who can do something there's only probably Goldin, and maybe not even, I would say PWCC would have that power, because you would have to have access to, they were displaying $40 million worth of memorabilia at the launch and stuff like that. And the stuff that they're showing is ridiculous in terms of the memorabilia, very, very rare stuff. And from a whole hobby standpoint, I think it's great that they're marketing, that memorabilia, sports memorabilia. It's a huge, huge market, first and foremost, including cards, right? So to me, that in itself, reaching the Netflix platform, you could say that it's too commercialized now, and it's watered down, but it's bringing enormous amounts of people into the hobby, in my opinion. And it's literally a marketing ploy to bring more people, and it's part of Fanatics' strategy as well. And it's better for everybody involved at that level to be able to, execute something of this magnitude. I've seen the production quality, and coming from a production background, I'm dabbling into that, and the complexity of it. And some people will say, oh, it's cringe worthy on some things where it's staged. Just try creating something out of nothing, and try creating a storyline and translating that into a media form. Good luck. It's easier said than done, for sure. It's easy to criticize what I'm saying. So obviously it's going to take those guys to kind of get into the rhythm and I haven't watched the whole thing, but I thought Ken did a phenomenal job, first and foremost. I think that it's great for the hobby because it addresses and educates people that don't know anything about the hobby. So for instance, when they're talking about like the Curry Topps Chrome Gold, that was a new guy into the hobby. They really don't know anything, and they sit down and educate them on the process, the grading process. What's the difference between a 9 and a 10 or an 8 and a 10, all those things, and why the rarity. So they take a good amount of time educating people in the hobby. And I know the hobbyists are going to be like, no crap. Like we've known that. It's like, yeah, it's not for you. It's totally different. But for me, I appreciate things like that, because if I'm a holder of rare cards, and to me, it's all about rare memorabilia, scarcity, like, whether it's moments, if you're a collectible, there's a Jackie Robinson jersey, for instance. It's like, that's insane. Like, that's like, we're not even talking about cards. They're talking about scarcity, things that you can't buy anymore. So I think that's the overall take on my way of the way I look at the hobby. That's what investing is all about, and enjoying sports at the same time, because it is historic. You do own a piece of history, and there are cards that are iconic, and like the 52 Mantle. It's like, is it saying that Mickey Mantle's the best player that ever existed? No. But that card is iconic. It's a piece of art. So therefore, a lot of people equate, how can this card be worth that much more than this card? It's like, the hobby's more than just performance on sports. Like, there's so many variables that we haven't touched upon from the memorabilia standpoint. And that's why, from a fanatic standpoint, you got to be pretty excited that that's their game. That's their game. And you have guys like Michael Rubin and, Ken Goldin, and some people will have their opinions on this. I'm not here to blow smoke up their asses. Like, it is what it is. To me, I'm just looking at it from a hobby health standpoint. Is it good for us, or is it going to hurt us in the long run? I don't think it's going to hurt us. I think it's going to bring in a new set of collectors and people who love sports. There are a lot of people that aren't involved in the hobby, right? So that just creates more of a supply demand for any collectible that you own, right? And it will change the dynamics of the hobby. So that's kind of like my 2 cents on that. Like, whether, you could criticize the production or whatever you want. I thought it was produced well, and I think it's healthy for the hobby and great for everybody in the marketing side, from Goldin to the hobby.
Yeah. Well said.
Yeah. I watched it. I watched all of it. How many episodes? I think it was 6 episodes.
6.
And it looks like, and the way they built it, obviously this is gonna be a continual thing where there's more and more episodes that continue to come out. The production value is top notch. I think they did a good job. You can tell, like, the first 1 or 2 episodes, certain scenes and certain scenarios, they did have to produce it. It's clearly, like, what's actually happening in the scene, I'm sure either happened prior or is a real thing, like meeting up with the buyer or the client. It's a real thing, but then perhaps the producer says, can you guys, in this scene, can you guys maybe talk about this or whatever, right? So you can tell the way that they're talking. There was kind of like a little bit of like awkward acting involved. So it did come out. I mean, I'm not going to lie. It was pretty cringy watching like the first couple of episodes.
Right.
But once you get to like episode 5 and 6, for those that didn't like, maybe tuned off and then didn't continue on, they actually get pretty comfortable in front of the camera. So you got to give them a bit of credit. Like, I can't criticize them because I would probably be the cringiest one on camera. So, so I can't blame them. Like, I mean, I think it was perfectly fine. Yeah. And in terms of, who this benefits, Hyung hit it, man. Like, Goldin is number one benefiter of this, right? If you watch other similar types of programs, like, for example, the most popular one is Pawn Stars. Right. I mean, Pawn Stars was a little shop that nobody knew about on the Las Vegas Strip. And now people, when visiting Vegas, make it a point to go visit the Pawn Stars store. And there's like a 2-hour lineup just to get in there, right? Like, this is clearly going to bring Goldin's company and branding to the eyes of the masses. That's number one for sure. And then in terms of the rest of the hobby and the industry, for sure. I mean, I'm going to go back to Pawn Stars, but when you look at Pawn Stars, like the awareness, if you ever watch Pawn Stars, I was a big fan. I watched a lot of it. It brings a ton of awareness, right? A ton of awareness of all these different things that are of value that you never thought were of value, right? And in terms of, will this bring more hobbyists in? I'm sure it will. Would it bring more investors in, and maybe some folks that you don't really want to be, the purists and the hobbyists and the in this? Yeah, it'll attract anybody and anyone, people looking to make money, whatever. It's going to attract because of that awareness, right? And so I think I think it's going to benefit the hobby for sure in that way. Like, I think, the silver lining is the three of us, we're the stereotypical story, right? We're around 40 years old. We collected in the 90s during the junk wax era. Everybody goes to college and university, and you kind of you don't have time to be collecting cards. And then you kind of come back into it. We all kind of came back to it in the last couple of years. We have friends, because let's be honest, probably every single one of our friends in the early 90s, we all collected cards. And how many of us now are in the hobby? Like the three of us and a handful of other guys. Like, I could name all of my friends who had baseball cards or hockey cards at some point in their life, right?
Right.
So this kind of show, if they end up watching it, it could start to make them now, as much as we try to, if we talk about it, people are going to be like, oh, that's kind of, you guys are crazy. I can't believe you collect cards. But then if they watch like a really well produced Netflix program, they're going to be like, whoa, okay, let me see this a little differently.
I agree.
Right.
Hey, I remember collecting cards. Okay. So absolutely, I
Good
think
point.
it'll help. We'll see what the real impact is, but I think it's certainly a positive for the hobby.
Yeah. I like all your points, and not much more to add than that. But like the fact that Ken Goldin, it was almost set up perfectly for Ken Goldin to have this series. Like, he was the face. We talk about PWCC. Like, who's the face there?
Right,
They're a big auction house. They're respected.
Right.
Heritage auctions, same. Like, you don't know who's in charge. Who's the guy? That's kind of running the show there. But you got the salesman in Ken, you got the entertainer in Ken, so it's kind of a no-brainer for Netflix producers, I'm sure, to say like, hey, we could center a series around this guy, and whether you like him or not, I know there's heavy detractors, people that just don't like Ken for who he is, but I mean, you can't take away from what he's accomplished and what he's built.
I will say this. I've personally dealt with Goldin, and I had a bad experience. I've personally dealt with Ken and had a tremendous experience. So for me, at the end of the day, it is what it is. Like you said, a lot of people are gonna, hate on the guy. But for me, I have no stake in the game. Nothing with Goldin. I don't even care to partner up with anybody. But Ken Goldin was a stand-up guy, quality guy, cares about the hobby. He has the pull and flex to basically show off what he's accomplished in the hobby. Like I said, and you said, who else is going to do it? Who else can flex the way he flexes right now, right? So it's and then on top of that, having guys like Drake, Mike Tyson, they've done it right in terms of getting the right people involved, in terms of getting the eyes out there for sure.
Yeah. I hope there's going to be a season 2. I would definitely watch it. And I like your point too, John. Like, all the people that are on the periphery of the hobby that collected in the past, this might be the thing that gets a few more into the hobby at least. And I guess that's just great for the hobby in general. You want more people to come in to the space to make the industry sustainable, right? And this is, I think, Hyung, you mentioned it. This is the Fanatics game plan. They say they want a 10x.
Yeah.
The only way you do that is you need to get people into the hobby,
100%.
New people into the hobby, not the same old guys, not the same old crew. You need new people that, low hanging fruit are the ones that collected in the past. Get them interested in again. And then you work also on, people that might collect other things, other than sports cards. It's all kind of related. I always joke with my wife now. I'm like, I totally get why you love collecting bags. I totally get it. Before it's like, why? It's so expensive. It's just a piece of leather.
See, that's where you went wrong. You admitted that. You're screwed. Because God knows how much you spend on cards, Clark.
What? $100? That's it. Okay. If my wife is listening, $100. Okay. I put a hard limit.
A total of $500. That's all we ever spend
in one day. But yeah. I think like looking at the social media feeds generally, I think it's been positive reviews. Yeah. I haven't really heard like anyone bashing it. I'm sure there are, but I try to just look at the positive stuff in general. But yeah, I've seen that people seem to like the production, like you guys were talking about, and we'll see what happens. Netflix, I'm sure it's all about the ratings for Netflix, right? So if it does well, you can bet that there's going to be a second series. So I guess we'll have to wait to find out. All right, that'll end off our Friday episode. We'll have a brand new episode this coming Tuesday, and we'll see you in a few days. Bye. Hey, thanks for listening to Cards to the Moon. We'd really appreciate you subscribing to our podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts. And you can also connect with each of us on Instagram at 5cardguys, or you can follow Hyung at Integrity Sports Cards, or John at TradeU at Recess. You can also check us out at 5cardguys.com. Thanks again, and hope to connect soon.